Every time I do a presentation where Atlassian is, I found that we are a small version of Atlassian, few years behind. Because the solution that they're going to is our 2-year vision to do something very similar. And today we're going to be talking a little bit that, but I'm Thiago and this is Richard. Say hi. Yeah. All right, so we're going to be talking a little bit of our journey about data integrations and how we use Protobufs. As Mike said, we're going to be a little bit of deep dive on that small piece of the Protobuf. The architecture of the data mesh that they do is very similar to the architecture that we have, so it was very good to have their presentation. So we're going to talk about that middle Protobuf thing here today. So a little bit about the agenda. We are going to be talking a little bit about safety culture, because who knows about safety culture here? Oh my God. It's getting a lot of people. We are getting important. We are popular these days. It's very important to see. Yeah, because the joke that I always say is like, when you go to an event of technology, a lot of people had no idea about safety culture. But you go to a construction event, everyone knows. Tradies love us. So a little bit about safety culture. We call ourselves an improvement platform. What is it about? So safety culture started as a checklist app long time ago. And it evolved to be a whole improvement platform where we provide the checklist that people can go there and put data from their from their warehouse, the physical warehouse, not the data warehouse, the physical warehouse, industry, retail, Sofitel, for example, they do checklists on every room after they clean to find out the room is on the standards that they want. And if one room is not clean enough, they send a training for their staff to sort it out. So we have a full cycle of training, gathering data, managing IoT, and now we have an insurance branch. Talk about a few numbers. So this is a little bit outdated, but we do more than 1 billion checks per year. We have more than 77,000 lessons delivered per day. So people are doing training per day. More than 70,000 organizations are using our platform and more than 180 countries. And as I was talking very briefly, we have a few things that is insurance, safety docs. Shex is a lonely worker that we're going to be helping the people that are in middle of nowhere doing some stuff to, if anything goes bad, they can call for help. And we have ADAP that's now called Safety Culture Training. That is our training platform. So we're right. So now I'm a manager. I don't code anymore. I just find problems to Richard to solve. So I'm going to be talking about the problem, and Richard was the one who built this solution, and he's going to be telling a little bit about that story. So the problem started on our architecture a long time ago. So this is a very simplified version, just to be very clear, extremely simplified. So a few years ago, we moved to RDS instances in our platform. We used to use Couchbase a long time ago. We moved to Postgres RDS. And I was just myself. I had to build things very, very quickly. On a keynote, they talk about Kafka Connects. That was the solution that we did on the time. We had Kafka already in the infrastructure. We enable a Kafka Connect, JDBC Connect, that's sent to the data lake, that get processed. We have a data lake on S3, and we have our data warehouse with that lake house architecture, all orchestrated by Airflow. And that worked for a while when we have 2 RDSs. And then the architecture of the business changed. And they decided, why we don't build 1 RDS per service in the platform? I say, everyone was happy. The data engineer was crying. So what that happened with that was, when they start to build a bunch of RDSs, we start to find few problems. Scalability. So we had already hundreds of tables in multiple physical databases that we need to connect straight away. So that created a big problem, because for each database or each table, it depends on the configuration, we had to have a topic that we had to sync in our Kafka. So that creates a lot of maintenance on the Kafka topics. Standards. So each service, they had the whole freedom to build the tables the way that they want. I usually say people do not know with freedom. When they have too much freedom, they do whatever they want, and that destroys the data engineer life. So each safety culture team was creating their own tables with no standardized structures. A lot of lack of metadata, a lot of those schemas keep with no timestamps or no user IDs or no organization IDs, that create a bunch of problems. Maintenance, that was the biggest part that we start to hurt us a little bit. That was very hard to maintain that very, very big footprint. So was a bunch of time invested to make sure the pipelines are working, make sure that we have the right things to the right place. But the biggest problem that we have is when the engineers would change the schema of their databases. And when they changed the schema, they couldn't see the impact that they have on us because we were there just running few queries. The query was working, so no problem, but the data downstream was completely broken. And deployment, too many connections, too many moving parts. And every time a new DB was created, a new table was created, although we have the Kafka Connect to help us, was just to push the data to a Kafka topic. But we need to go through a bunch of Terraform, we need to go for a bunch of approvals, a bunch of GitHub PRs, and that would take a lot of time. But we thought that things was fine. We thought everything was around the fire, and we were thinking, it's fine. But then the things start to hurt the data engineering team. So impact on the team, Richard. The impact that we was facing was few things there. First impact was related to long sourcing time. So we were to bring a new data source, we're taking a lot of time, a lot of people involved, a lot of approvals. And although we have the communication of the Kafka Connect, everything after the Kafka, we had to build from scratch because each table had their own definitions, their own ways of working. The second thing, we had to solve one problem at a time, so each table was unique because each service was unique, and sometimes there was no metadata, not even a timestamp. You asked for the engineer when this record was changed, and they said, I have no idea. And I said, okay, that's going to be a long afternoon. So that was basically one of the things that we were suffering. We could move for CDC, but even though we will still have a problem of if they change the tables and everything else on that. And alarms, over and over. Because we have so many connections, so many databases, so many moving parts. Every single day, we had an alarm. Every single day. Weekends, and I'm part of the roster as well, so I'm a good manager. I answer alarms on the weekends and sometimes 2 in the morning. But then we find out that was actually not fine. And when I said that was not fine, I talked with Richard, and I said, Richard, solve this.
Thank you. Let me just start here. Thank you so much, Thiago, for that. Yeah, the solution. So how did we solve this problem? First, we understood that we have to take this in different phases because, well, there are some moving parts, so much footprint on the infrastructure that was difficult to tackle this issue. So yeah, as Thiago described, we have like communication per RDEs, but this is kind of complicated because you have a big footprint on the platform. So it's difficult to understand what's happening. And every time that you want to consume a new message, a new table, you have to spin up this part of the infrastructure and you have to build the pipeline from scratch. That pretty much take me a week for doing that per table. So that's a lot of work. So the first thing that we did was to centralize this. So instead of having a connection directly to every RDAs, we were having a only central point of communication. That was one Kafka topic that was managed, all of the other messages that were sending, or each product team. So what is the advantage of that? You can start like standardizing. You can start centralizing all of these messages. So you can like start putting some governance on like the information and the messages that you are receiving. So that was the first phase that we did. Centralize everything, try to organize that, and let's start from here. Let me just... The second one was standardization using an envelope structure. So pretty much it's similar to what we were talking before, right? So we have a Protobuf, but this Protobuf let us know like a lot of information, a lot of metadata that, for example, who sent me this message? When did they send me this message? What was the user related to this? So you start seeing like all of this metadata that is related just to the message. So that's the way that you can enforce, like, hey, I need this information. I need that you fulfill all of these requirements before sending me your message. So second, having this was quite handy because we could start like checking, hey, this field of this value is in the correct structure. Are you sending me UUID? Are you using hyphens, or are you using capital letters to do this? So we can start managing all of the messages and putting the rules for them. And lastly, we have like the control of understanding what's happening, because this is like a live piece of code that every team owns. So basically, we own the envelope, but each team owns like their own structures. So if they want to change it, they let us know. They say, hey, I'm going to add this new message. Could you please review my code? And this looks simple, but it's including us in the equation. So that's great. The next phase was like, okay, we are building the pipeline. We are centralizing everything. Now we can start building automation. And with automation, we have notifications. So that's great. We don't have to wait that a message arrives to know that something new has arrived to the platform. So every time that an engineer sits with us and design a new message, the first record that arrives in our platform will be identified by the pipeline. So it will tell us, hey, there is this new message that just arrived. So that's amazing because you don't have to wait that the pipeline breaks to know that something new just arrived. And also, as every company, we have some data sets that are critical. So we need to understand when this information didn't arrive. Imagine you have like this critical data set that it doesn't produce any record during the day. Something weird is happening. So why do we have to wait until the pipeline is broken? No, we can take an action and check if there is information. So that's great. And lastly, that's also connected with the first stuff that we have. Like, what happens if I receive a malformed record? What should I do? Should I allow this record to go through the downstream models and break the pipeline, and next day we are going to have an incident? No, we have a different data set that will filter out all of these records that doesn't fulfill the format, and also will give us like all the metadata to understand what happened. And we can have a communication with the team and say, hey, you are sending us this information that doesn't fulfill the requirements. So let's sit together and understand what are you trying to send to us. And lastly, you can imagine like we can put all of these automations, we can put all of these notifications, but we need to make a change in the culture of like, in the culture around the data within the teams. Because in the past, as Thiago mentioned, something new, something changes in the RDS. And basically, the data engineer was the responsible to see what happened, what's broken, go consume everything. If there is a new message, you have to create the whole pipeline, and you have to backfill from day one. So that's a lot of work for the data engineer, right? So we changed this approach to a new flow. So now what is the new way to work in SafetyCulture? We sit together. So we sit together with the software engineer, the analyst, and the data engineer. And we discuss, okay, what information makes sense for us? Because sending all the data set is like unuseful. Like you are not answering your question. We need to first understand what are these business questions that we want to answer. And then we can create a message that will fulfill all of these requirements. And that's the beauty of building this, that basically we sit together at the first point of the pipeline, and we discuss, okay, we are going to create this message. These are like the fields that we require. And then it's responsibility of the software engineer to add this message in the envelope structure. And from here, basically the pipeline will let us know, hey, there is new data coming. The whole team will notify. And yeah, that will help us a lot. So yeah. We approach this in these 4 phases, and we can say that today, yeah, this is fine. It's looking great. Now it takes us like just a few seconds to receive new messages. We don't have to spin new infrastructure. And yeah, it's a lot of time that we are saving. So heading to Thiago.
You see that it's really fine now. We are actually hiding the fires, but yeah, you need to believe on us. It's much better. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about results. So that is one of the things that for me was very important. And I found out as a manager, people care about colorful numbers and big numbers. So I put big numbers and colorful after this. But yeah, so one thing that we noticed with all this piece of work, our development time dropped significantly, basically 90%. In the worst case scenarios that we had before, we would take a few days to have the pipeline approved and pipeline deployed. Now in half a day, because we still need to do just few more manual steps that can be automated in the future, but we dropped by 90%. So almost no codes required. Few things that we still need to add, that's a little bit of SQL and a little bit of DBT documentation, but few of those things can be automated. Alerts triggered, we reduced it a lot. We still have some legacy systems on RDS till today that were not migrated, but they are deprecated. So they're deprecated for almost 2 years. But they were going to be decommissioned one day. I have faith. But about this pipeline, is extremely rare to fail because the message, if it's not following our standards or not following what we define in the Protobuf on the contract, is not even be able to be published. So that helps to avoid wrong message to arrive. We have 2 instances that a bad message arrive. Actually, 2 times it happened on a more than 30 pipelines that we have before. So that was that message that Richard shared. So our life was much, much better. No more alarms without stop. And adoption, I can say in the last 12 months, we had 100% adoption on this pipeline. So when the business saw the value, when the software engineers start to see the value out of this pipeline, so it's quick for them to publish, their data will be available very quickly, and they be able to say, show me data or didn't happen. So this is also help them measure their own success of the features that they are building. So as the part of Richard said on the culture of the business, the change that we have was you publish your data will be available, and you will be able to measure your success, and you make our life easier, and everyone will be happy. In theory, of course, not everyone will be happy, but in most of the time that will give a big impact to the business. That was a very great piece of work that Richard and I worked together. Richard developed this from his first big project by himself. So that was a very nice outcome for SafetyCulture. And I will go for questions if anyone has. Thank you.
Thank you.